Yes.
Let's go ahead and start the Planning and Zoning and Variance Commission meeting, date February 27th, 2023. Time is 5:32. Can we please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, since we're on a time bubble, I guess you probably just want to get in and get started, ain't it?
Yep.
Click on window.
Which one? Oh, the screen.
Go to screen to window.
Oh. Yeah, I was gonna try to do it with a. Okay. But I don't know. The problem is that people want that they.
Oh, to share it.
Yeah. How do you on Teams? Why don't I'm a horrible.
So you know, click under window, click that. Click,
Where it says window, then
Yeah.
Michael click on that.
click the
It
picture.
has 4. No, that one, yeah.
Gotcha.
And then you can select which window.
Well, can you? How do you let someone else share?
Oh, or you're wanting to share?
I want to share from my computer.
Oh.
Oh,
It
okay.
was like that.
Yeah, if you'll go to your computer, I can do that for you.
Sorry. How do you like allow? There you go.
Yeah, I think you gave it under your name.
Trying to learn this TV. I'm very intimidated.
Is it not letting you share from your computer?
I think it is now.
It should.
Yeah, it just allowed.
I don't think Teams blocks people out.
There it is. All right. Okay, so tonight you have in front of you Article 4 and Article 5, zoning and subdivision. These two articles were changed to reference major impact, limited impact, and administrative review procedures. So they were severely condensed, and we went off of, if you remember when we went through the tables, you said limited impact for this. So now you'll see that it's a limited impact in the application procedures there. I will go through and point those out, but there's two other things that are, when I said I wasn't going to get into entitlements, that were brought up by staff that I want to talk with the Planning Commission tonight about, because I think those are really the controversial things. The only other one that's also in here that I did change was the expiration of conditional use permits, and I want to talk with the Planning Commission about that tonight too. So there was two instances where around accessory structures, around setbacks, that the staff wanted to bring to the Planning Commission's attention that were basically, one of them's a typo, that we believe is a typo, and then the other one is an issue that the staff is having with a allowance for 0 setbacks for accessory structures in the rear, which is causing issues with utilities, access, etc. That they would like to just make it the standard 5 foot. So I'll show you both of those, but those were the two that kind of came out of this that were kind of cleanups that came out of the development review team and issues that they're having with those kind of small, minor things. So the two processes, there's 3 processes in Article 4. There's conditional use, there is variances, and there is plan unit developments. Conditional uses and variances would both be limited impact, and plan unit development would be a major impact. And that, again, cites Article 3 and sets you back there. But I want to jump to conditional uses. So one real quick one that is going to be in here. One thing that is occurring right now as part of the grant that I'm funded under, the city has the ability to do a update to the city zoning map. And what this basically says in here is that every year the city council shall certify a city zoning map. So that's kind of the best way to keep a clean copy on title in the city. So the city council every January should, if there's been any kind of rezone, every January, one of the first meetings it is done by resolution, is they certify the zoning map. And we did that. I got into a controversy in a previous career where someone was challenging their zoning, and we went to the we didn't have a certified zoning map that hadn't been done and updated in 5 years, and they were pointing to this is a certified map and this is what I'm zoned, and they were like, the person before you rezoned it, and here's the ordinance, or it's not on the certified zoning map, and we got into a big kerfuffle, and basically the judge was like, certify your zoning map, and then this is not an issue. So the good news is that the city has grant dollars actually not only to have it updated, but also to have it as an online platform moving forward too. So we'll be able to get that on the website, and it'll be done. Our goal is to have that adoption happen at the same time we update the code.
That sounds good.
All right. I added this sentence, which came up under conditional uses, and does not set precedent for future conditional use applications. So at a previous meeting, you guys were discussing that you don't want conditional uses to be precedent. They aren't, but I made it explicit. So that was just something that I added based on some comments that you had at a previous meeting. Jumping down, we will talk about this in March. You have several code citations for different use-specific standards that there are no use-specific standards in your code. Bars and restaurants, taverns. Keep in mind that you don't need use-specific standards for everything. If it's a conditional use, and there are already conditional use review standards like the noise, population. So you don't need for bars and restaurants to create a whole nother list of things that a bar and restaurant has to do if it's a conditional use. That's my computer.
So, back up to the last thing you said, adding that sentence in, does not set precedents. That stops us from setting precedents. All we gotta do is say that we're not gonna.
Conditional uses should already be there. A conditional use is a site-specific review.
Right?
So it doesn't, but because you guys got into this with the Holy Trinity,
Right.
I put it in here.
Right. I mean,
So it's
all
now
we gotta do is just put that in there and we're squared away.
that's what your code says now.
Well, that ain't good. I guess we should put that in there before.
Well, I mean, the way it reads, it currently does kind of
Right.
imply that.
But I didn't state it.
I made it very explicit because at your last meeting when you guys were debating the precedent, I wanted to, because I was online and I had a board reception, I wanted to go into a diatribe about the fact that your code said that.
Right.
And I was like, you know what, we'll just let you guys go through it and we'll put it in there.
Thank you.
Like I said, there's a couple in here, restaurant, drive-through facilities. I'm gonna bring these use-specific, these two, they're coming back to you in March. Again, I said I wasn't gonna change entitlements. These would, if I were to add a section here, it would change entitlements, especially to bars and restaurants. I would strongly suggest you don't have additional requirements of bars and restaurants in your code. If the fact that they might already be a conditional use is already stringent enough to look at traffic, noise, impacts, etc., that you might be worried about in the neighborhood. Beyond that, creating additional standards, to me, is a little bit heavy-handed, which is opposite of what we're trying to accomplish,
Well,
right?
not only that, but we already have a hard enough time attracting those businesses to our area. If we make it harder on them to be in our area, we're only gonna limit the number that we have by more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a no-go. We want more business.
Wireless communication facilities, you have one of the most extensive wireless telecommunication facility review. In fact, it has its own set of applicant review standards. I made it its own article. I am completely removing it from this, and so you'll see that now you go to Article 14, and it's conditional anywhere. So you guys will actually take that, and if you ever get a big application like that, there's a whole entire section. But I removed it from this section of the code because it completely is contrary to the actual processes contained in this article.
I believe way back when the city actually hired an engineer to come in and do a wireless
It is-
plan.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
complete. Someone came in and completely
Yeah.
did a code
This
on
is a
it
big deal.
and then put it in the wrong section.
Yeah. They,
So this is the one that is causing a lot of heartburn at a staff level. So this is the rear setback. There's a little annotation here that's number 1, and if you go down here, it says no rear setback required when an alley is present. The staff, after going through the development review meeting, the alleys, because of the maintenance issues and because utilities are in there, building right on the rear property line is causing major utility issues. Again, what this is saying is for new, right? If you had a building that was on the alley, there's a whole non-conforming section that they can come into. That this isn't saying that they have to demolish their building now and move it forward, right? Those buildings will be grandfathers. There's a non-conforming clause, so as long as they would be taking that building and not expanding the footprint, they would be able to stay on that and repair it. So it's not doing that. So I kind of need a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether or not you would want to go along with the staff on this one.
What is the purpose of, what is the problem that I mean, because we're in essence, by going with staff, we're taking 5 feet away from every single residence in the community, so, and
So
there's a lot of people that have built all the way up
Against their back.
against their back fence, and so, you know, I mean, I'm that way, I mean,
So this is only saying where they're do an alley.
well, no, I don't have an house, so.
So this one applies to you.
That's what it's saying.
But I mean, I would be, anyway, mine's a whole
Sure.
different thing, but anyway, I mean, so.
Well, this is saying when there's an alley present, and then so the rationale for the staff is that when there's an alley present, there's a utility in that alley. And the issue for them is allowing people to build to the alley is causing, because it's only at 20 foot, and normally it's not just one, there's power. Normally it's power, is it sewer in the alleys here?
Sewer.
Yeah, so you have power, sewer, and gas, I think, in your alleys.
telephone sometimes too.
Yeah, and so when you're trying to get spacing as required by the code in 20 feet, they're pushing it to one side or the other, and it's coming right up. So it's causing maintenance nightmares for the staff. Not only that, life safety as well with fire trucks and fire apparatus accessing alleys, having a structure right on the alley without any buffer for a fire truck or anything is also a life safety concern. The final thing, which I don't want to bring up, but I'm going to bring up, because it is life safety under the IRC, if you do zero setbacks, they should really be fire rating those structures. And when you start talking about doing fire ratings on the side of the garages, you've like exponentially created costs.
Yeah, cost just went to the roof for fire.
I don't want to bring that up because I don't know what the practice has been because it's technically a public right of way, but you could have a heavy-handed code official.
See, I thought there was a setback already in place.
There is.
There is.
There is.
Last sentence at the end contradicts it.
So there is a
So
five.
we're just clarifying.
No, you're saying that all the setbacks. If you have an alley, your setback's still 5 feet. So you're no longer allowing a zero setback. Why don't you stew on this? We'll talk about it again in March, but that's the staff recommendation. Again, tonight we're not making any formal recommendations, right? But I'm seeing kind of some head nodding right now that we can talk about it.
My opinion is, if it's life and safety, then it's gotta be put into place. I mean, we gotta keep our city workers.
So if it's a structure, they could build if they're building a garage back to the
Yes.
setback, they can still build a driveway on that setback.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Do you think there'd be any where people would go all the way up and then encroach into the alley a little bit though?
I think there's been instances of that where and again, keep in mind that this is just for new construction, right? So I want to be real clear there that you have the ability through non-conformity to maintain what is existing. But to answer your question, what we've been saying is that from here on out, if you're building a garage in the alley, you have to be 5 feet off. You can no longer push it up against the alley.
But the driveway,
Because
could you build
The driveway's not structured correctly. Yeah, you can
we've
put
had several of them come before us where somebody went to go get a building permit. They had already built and half of that building or a third of that was in an alley. And they wanted to vacate the alley. And sometimes planning and zoning went with them, but sometimes we didn't. But there was no repercussion if it was already there.
And your nonconformity section will deal with those. So that's different. So this, what we're saying with when we delete, if we do delete this, what we're saying is moving forward with new construction.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
You know, I've worked the utilities and stuff, and taking those big utility trucks down these alleys is already hard enough. If you don't have that extra 5 foot, sometimes it's impossible for those trucks and the big fire trucks to even get to where they need to be. I believe that the extra 5 foot is necessary.
I've seen, the only place I've ever seen this is in like dense downtown areas where you allow it. You can allow it, but normally it's in a commercial zone, and then you have either brick or masonry walls.
Right.
And you require 2-hour walls on them.
Right.
So that so you don't have a situation where you have to get a fire apparatus. But this was surprising for me when the staff brought it up, because I mean, you know, if you were to do a statistic of where most fires occur in residential structures, where is it?
Yeah.
In the garage. It's because someone lights like a can of gas on fire or something. You know, that's where all your flammables are. Okay. Well, again, I'm going to bring back when in March is when you guys are going to make a formal motion. The council will help do it during your normal meeting. When we do that, you guys could all have these kind of nuanced ones for you to make motions on and either agree or not. So that was that one. Okay, so this is the big change. And I'm going to go to simple markup here. You can see how much, this is a really good example. This is how much of the stuff we're deleting out of your code for each of these sections and shortening and expediting your code. Just, you can see that every process has something like this in your code. So that, but I'm going to go to simple markup so that you can just see this, and it's not very. So the one thing that when I was going through here, the expiration of conditional use, you had basically a process in which the staff was responsible for bringing back a conditional use every year to re-up it. And I understand for marijuana and where that came from. Your marijuana code has a section, and there's a whole section on retail. And again, that lives in its own article now. This is very not. It was very not run of the mill for the way most communities deal with it. The way most communities deal with conditional uses is that if there's a municipal code violation or a neighborhood complaint, then the city can bring it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for reconsideration. Also, the Planning and Zoning Commission can set a limit, but you would have to do that as a condition of approval. It's just not automatic. So you still have the ability to do it. It's just not making every single conditional use you ever pass have to come back year after year after year.
Right.
So I would strongly suggest go into this, A, from an administrative burden, B, as trying to be business friendly to if you're making a bar come in and get a conditional use and they have to come back every single year, it's like, you got better things to do as a restaurant or a business owner, right? Than to show up to, your meetings are fun.
So meaning,
I enjoy them, but.
so long as if they had a clean slate or a good record throughout the year and there was no violations, no nothing, then it would be something that staff could say.
No,
would it still have to come
no,
back?
if they've had no issues, nothing, they're done. They keep operating. It's only in the event that they have a municipal code violation or neighborhood complaints, like a police officer shows up to a nuisance.
Are there reapplication fees and all of that the city expects to get once a year that they wouldn't?
What were you guys originally doing with these reviews?
No, we call the fire department out and do inspections. The police would come out and do inspections. Everybody in the department has to do a review of the file.
Yeah.
It's very time
Is that on
consuming.
marijuana?
No, that's on all
It was everything.
Not on marijuana, because marijuana is its own kind of deal.
Marijuana
Yeah,
would still
that's a
be
state
excluded
mandated.
Because I know the city council still wants to control the marijuana. But everything else, I can't see no reason to go through all of the inspections and stuff every year. I mean, that's a lot of work.
It is. When I read it, I was like, I would feel really bad for the staff.
Seems,
I felt really bad.
I thought it was wild. I just haven't seen that before.
seems like the saving in time and labor would far outweigh any revenue that would be generated by it, for sure.
And if there's a conditional use that has a lot of fuzz on it, that you have a packed audience, you can say, it says here, that the Planning and Zoning Commission the approval of a conditional use may, right here, this sentence, the approval of a conditional use may or may not identify an initial term for the conditional use. So as a planning commission, you can say, when you're making your motions of conditional approvals, like one is like they must provide 6 parking spaces. Another one could be they must come back in a year for a review of the conditional use to make sure there's no complaints. So you can do that. It's just not automatically making it. All right. See a lot of head nodding, which is good. Administrative adjustments, again, just going to the administrative approval process. And then again, amendments, again, just citing the process that is there. So PUD, where is it here? Right here, PUD applications shall be reviewed in compliance of 14-34. So instead of having this huge review procedures, it's a one sentence and you go through those right back. Variances. The only other thing I want to point out, just so variances, again, limited impact, but keep in mind that you still have all your review criteria. So those still live in each of these sections.
You know, one thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought about after we did the impact is whenever we take ourselves and put the planning and zoning and the city council in the same room, or whenever we make the city council the first level of our board as far as businesses, the only appeal that they have is to go to court.
That's correct, but the city council is always last.
I know, but there were a few instances where we were saying that the city council would be the first, the only level, major impact.
No, city council only sees major impact. So major impact is a concept review with city council. The city council can bring in the planning commission if it's like a major subdivision.
Right, but if they don't agree with what the city council says, their only recourse of action is to go to district court.
So it would go from major impact, it would go concept review, then they come to you for limited, they come before the planning and zoning commission. The planning and zoning commission then makes a recommendation to city council.
Okay.
So
As long as there's still one more, because we just don't want to have everybody, if they disagree with the decision that we make, we shouldn't have to directly go to court.
No, any appeals of your decisions go to council. There's really no other way though, because any appeal.
I understand there are some instances where court is the only answer, but we shouldn't paint ourselves into the corner to where we're doing that all the time.
Got you. No. So to clarify, any decision that you guys make is appealable to the city council. All right. So then the last one in this article that I wanted to show you. So these wireless communication was moved to its own article, but let's see here. So here it is, accessory structures. So this one right here, this was the big one. So this said accessory, let me see if I can actually pull it up. This is what it said. It said accessory structures shall be located from the front property line of the primary structure, or we changed it to the front building line. So we struck property. 14-49.9. It's page, if you're scrolling, it would be on page,
Like which document? Because like one of
article,
them stops at 39, and I didn't find one that went into the 40s. So
Really?
yeah, I mean they're different. There's like 3 versions of
I don't know, let me see here.
iPad.
Did you skip over the legally inhabited part of the storage and recreational vehicles, campers and trailers and stuff?
I did not change anything that's existing in the code.
There's a yellow highlight over the word legally inhabited.
Oh, that was not a, let me see here. I think that was just it was a typo.
Okay,
So
because
there-
I had a question about that because I wasn't clear. There's several instances around town where a house is vacant and there's storage, like, I'm talking 20 cars. And that made me nervous because I thought, no, it has to be an inhabited resident, right? Somebody has to be living there in order to,
Yeah, I apologize. So one thing that did happen is when we put this code into Word, there was a bunch of grammar. There was, believe it or not, your current code online had a lot of misspellings.
oh,
And so any misspelling or grammar change, we highlighted. So I just,
Yeah.
it probably inhabited was spelled wrong.
so, but then the next thing it says / inhabitable residence. So I'm like,
Gotcha. So this, you're talking about.
Is it disqualifying
so it
a
says here,
residence or saying that?
it says it's permitted on
Yeah.
the following, so that's where I was like, yeah, this has gotta be fixed.
Yeah, I agree. Is it disqualifying one or?
I see which one you're talking about. I didn't change it. Well, I understand what you're, let me reread that whole code section because I'm not prepared to talk to that tonight. But I'll bring you guys back the corrected, I understand what your concern is. The residence needs to be inhabitable, so you're not, yeah, I get it. I see how this is a rereading, but I would actually need to, I'm gonna actually have to study this code section before I can give you a recommendation.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying now. That was the reason that's highlighted, just not, I'm not trying to change anything.
No, I understand.
But the reason it was highlighted because it was a grammar, and I'm seeing why it.
Yeah, I think what it's trying to say is that the house or the residence has to be
Yeah.
occupied by someone and someone living there.
So it's not
A vacant house that is
so it's not
a
a junkyard.
storage junkyard, yeah.
So, but to clarify, vacant houses don't get an out to be a storage junkyard.
Correct.
Yeah, if it's not inhabitable, then nothing applies.
I
They
think it
shouldn't-
should be real simple, vacant or occupied,
Exactly,
right?
you
So
know,
it has to be an occupied unit in order to store.
because we have a few spots.
Yeah, and I will go through that, and Chris and I can talk and be
Come
like
up with a better word.
within
Yeah.
Occupied and vacant is pretty
Yeah.
easy, I think, or something to that.
We will fix that. This last one, I just wanted to get thumbs up on. You guys, obviously, I don't think it meant to be the property line, it meant to be the building line.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. I hope so. All right, so that is Article 4. Article 5 should be pretty quick
I
to
have
go.
a question before you leave Article
Oh.
4.
Yep, go ahead.
So on our last meeting, when you were talking about the condominiumization, and we talked about where it was gonna be an administrative review, and you were gonna clarify duplex or more than 2.
Mhm.
Did that,
So let's ask that question again here in a minute.
okay,
Let me get through. I did fix it.
you did, okay, that's
Let
all I
me-
wanted to know. I didn't see it.
Well, but it's important is I want to. It's a loaded question because you have in a lot of zone districts, multifamily is actually permitted, and if it's permitted,
Right,
it is exempt from coming in front of you.
right,
Now, condominiumization is actually major impact. What you're talking, so you're not talking about condominiumization. You're actually talking about townhome conversion.
thank you, yeah,
Yes.
you're right, sorry.
So, all right, let me pull up, and sorry, I wanna do the Word version here, so give me 1 sec. All right. Oh, sorry. Like I said, guys, I'm a horrible millennial. Should be like all on top of this. All right. So, again, in this section, really the only changes to this are changing the limited impact, administrative, or major impact, right? Citations. However, to do that, I needed to create one new section, which is the subdivision review standards. You had subdivision review standards under all of your different sections, so I took your review standards and just created one small section into it. So I didn't create anything new, but you had 6 different review standards for all the different types of subdivisions. So I just took one and made it its own section. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So we can go to that section here in a second, but I wanted to show you that. To answer your question, I did correct it and I also didn't correct it. I actually do need to add a townhome subdivision process in here. So I did not do that. So I will get on that and bring that back for your guys' review. It's in here, it's under plot plan, but I did not make an explicit section on the fact that they could actually bring a plat for. But you can see here that multifamily versus single family is in here. And I'll get into this here, I'll just go section by section. So, nothing changed in here except for getting into pre-application. So again, citing the section of the code that is pre-application. I'm going to get a simple markup here so that you guys can see. This gets really... And then here's your subdivision review standards. So this was just taken from the existing code. There. Again, these sections, just like conditional use, etc., this is where an applicant is preparing something to you. In their application, this is their narrative. Just like conditional use or variance, their narrative needs to address these five items. Final plat requirements has been condensed, but again, this was one of those things that you had a final plat for every single one. Now it's just one standard for everything. Again, minor subdivision, limited impact. Condominiumization, major impact. Scrolling down.
Okay, so in that major impact right there, their first appearance would be at the city council, correct? And if they don't agree with what the city council says, then their next course would be to district court, correct?
No, because if they don't agree with what city council says, it's a concept review, they shouldn't proceed with an application. Because the idea of the concept, well, let me explain. The idea of the concept review for an applicant is before they spend a bunch of money on an application. So concept review is, I can come in with a simple hand sketch site plan and some elevations before I spend all the money on engineering and everything. That whole meeting is to judge the appetite of the council. It's
Right.
not a formal recommendation, but if the council, if I'm an applicant and the council's saying like, if I want to do a downtown building and do these crazy uses in it, and I want to subdivide and sell them, and the council's going, no, you don't have parking, your firewalls, you're gonna need a fire alarm, blah, blah, blah.
Recommendations.
As an applicant, I don't get the warm and fuzzies, I shouldn't spend $100,000 on an architect.
I understand, shouldn't. But legally, don't we have to offer them that
Yeah, they can proceed.
course of action? I mean, So in those situations, we're saying, if you don't like what has been decided, court is that's where you
Well,
go.
there's not, so the concept review is not a formal decision. So their next step would be to revise their application based on the feedback and come to planning commission. And then they come to planning commission, and I'm guessing that if the council was raising a couple of major red flags, and they didn't address it in their application, you guys would say the same thing to them, saying, well, we'll make a recommendation to deny this to the city council because of these couple items.
Why are they skipping cleaning to start with?
Because you gotta remember that most major impact reviews are big projects. So they're millions of dollars. That's so the way it goes is the concept review has all it is, let me pull it up. It's the applicant is just getting feedback.
Yeah, but if the city council's already heard and already made up their mind, and then we step back to planning and zoning, we can't go back to city council for another decision on this decision because they're already biased and involved.
But they adjusted it, so before they spent the money, they go to city council, do you like this idea, or do you see problems? Before they spend a ton of money, then they go back, they address those problems, they put on the floor plan, design, do all that, they bring it in front of this commission.
Oh, it does go back here?
Yes, it would come here, then we would approve it or whatever, and then it would go back to city council for final approval.
I think you're getting. Let's go to Article 3 here, and it's a very I understand your concern.
Yeah, we have to offer this, because otherwise they're gonna get us on legal.
The city council's not necessarily rejecting it.
They're
What
proposing.
about if they say that one of the city council members is biased for a reason that's not in their code?
Well,
Then
that's all. That is a whole different thing.
But it is this.
Let's hold on. Let's read this. Let me find the section real quick, and we'll read it. I think this is gonna. So here it is. This is concept review. In order to provide for an exchange of information and ideas between the applicant, planning and zoning, and the city council, at concept review, the applicant shall discuss his or her proposal with the city council. The city council can elect to hold a joint meeting, right?
At that point, it puts us both out. There's definitely no recourse once you have a joint meeting.
Here it is right here. This is the key. This is the key sentence. The planning commission and council may make comments and informal recommendations regarding the proposed development, which shall not be binding, but may be considered by the applicant as they prepare their development plan. So it's a non-binding meeting. So let me tell you this from an applicant's, you're looking at this through the lens of the city. Take a step back. Look at this through the lens of an applicant. So you're looking at it as a planning commissioner, you need to look at this as an applicant. If I'm an applicant, I'm proposing a 100-unit subdivision, and I'm worried about some big ticket items like traffic, like an intersection upgrade, traffic, fire apparatus. There's a whole list of things I could be really scared to death of, and I'm gonna have to pay an engineer a lot of money to design like an interchange. So I would much rather spend $10,000 to get this very basic concept like drawn up that's not engineered, bring it in front of a joint meeting of you and the city council, and say, what are your big concerns?
Well, okay, so here's what I don't understand, okay? I don't understand how a concept meeting is a major impact, but it's just a guideline. But then we turn around and we go to the actual building of the permit, and that goes back to a limited impact, and it's set in stone.
No. From here, so the major impact zone process, right? So my first step, let's take the 100-unit subdivision application.
Right.
Let's put yourself in the view of the applicant. Put yourself in their shoes. So they come in for concept. Then from there, they submit a development plan. So now, once they've gone through the informal meeting, now they have to spend all the money for engineer plans and all the things that you guys are going to require that subdivision to show you when they come in front of limited impact.
Right. I'm just saying that we live in a world where cities are sued because they use the wrong color highlighter.
Yep.
If this isn't clear, and if we don't offer these people the right pathway, then we paint ourselves into a corner, and what we could end up with is exactly what we don't want in a place because they found a loophole that we didn't.
I agree, but I agree with what you're saying.
You know, I mean-
But I think the way that it reads, like when I hear it being read to me, I think it's pretty much, it states in there. It's a review. It's, you know, nothing is set in stone. It's like,
Once you hear something, your opinion is already made. You can't come back to those people for another decision.
no, I agree, but again, it's, what's the word?
Non-binding. But I will tell you that having sat through these, what always happens is that the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council, they listen to the application, and then what I've always as staff, what I've always done is said to the applicant, these are your big ticket items that are very expensive. This is your one opportunity to ask, like, are you really concerned about traffic at this intersection? And if everyone's up there going, oh yeah, you're gonna have to signal, there's gonna have to be a traffic light put in, and you're gonna have to put sidewalks and a crosswalk and upgrade the intersection. As an applicant, I'm like, oh boy.
Right? I understand what you're saying.
Americana way.
Uh,
We need a traffic light. Okay.
Well, but then there's the other thing too that you get with this, a lot of these things is like, what you can also have as an applicant come in and say, and this is a great example because I'm a housing consultant. Someone can say, I'm going to be coming in to do an affordable housing an affordable housing project that has true deed restrictions, and I'm going to be asking for a bunch of waivers from this, and this. And is affordable housing a major issue, and are you guys open to considering these things? And during this concept, I've seen in Crescent Butte where we had the most stringent codes, and my city council or my town council would be like, nope, you're meeting the code. And so don't come in here with, missing 10 parking spots. And the applicant's like, what that does is like the whole top floor of the building's gone. And so they know that before they submit to which you guys were as opposed are. So it's really important feedback because when you get into, the next step here is engineering plans. So what you're telling somebody is before they spend a lot of money on engineering and all the other stuff is they're getting a first whack at the big, and it's a courtesy. That's really what it is. It's non-binding, it's a courtesy shot. Because the problem is these two are their only input they've had on that application up until that point.
Okay.
And so you gotta think of it from the applicant side. I get what your concerns are, but as an applicant, you value that.
And they can go back for that meeting as many times as needed, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they propose something and everyone is up there is just like, I've seen it, where it's like everyone's just staring at the applicant like this is the worst. And I've been in the staff position where I'm like, this is a really bad idea, and they're like, no, it's gonna be great. I'm like, no, like no.
I'm just trying to take care of the city. The city's got a lot of liability here, and if we don't put this in writing, then it's the same thing as saying go for it.
No, I understand what I will tell you, and I probably shouldn't say this because I will. Where I came from in Salida was the most litigious job I've ever had. I got sued weekly on public records requests for every email that I ever sent. That's why I wound up leaving. Is I had a group that would do a public records request, and I would download and print every one of my emails and put it in a binder, and I have it on the front desk because I had some group, and I did that for about a year and a half, and then I finally left.
So this is why people can't get their jobs done.
Right. But I will tell you that we put this into the code. I readopted this as a because to be honest with you, the reason this is the reason I did this was because I was sick of applicants saying, I'm sick of Michael Uhrman telling me how my project's gonna go. And I'm like, okay. So go in front of the council, and again, it's like a fart in church, and you're like, told you! Yeah. Like, that wasn't gonna work out for you. But at least they heard it from everyone else instead of me.
Right, I get you.
So,
like I said, I'm just trying to make sure that the city's squared away.
But no, it's a great question. Great question. Alright, going back to, so the only other, sorry. Stop sharing. Share. So condominium, major impact. So this, where is it? Here it is. So I caught it, but then I didn't put in the townhome subdivision. So this is where I want to be real crystal clear, because you're concerned about the question on which is valid, of like, if I'm doing a multifamily project and I can just come in and do a townhome plat afterwards, is like you're just getting administrative approval. What's really important about this is that if it's a permitted use in those use tables and you're allowed to do multifamily, there is no review.
Right.
And it's permitted. So that's the only place where you're gonna see that rub, and I wanted to be real clear on that.
Yeah.
So, I don't really, unless you wanna change those permitted uses, which I would not.
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember, I don't know if I have my notes from last time.
Well, your concern was that you could build like 8 townhomes and come in and subdivide them, which was a valid concern. And what I was talking to you about was that the only administrative use was a single family. And so right here, so
I
this
think wherever it was, and I'm looking,
this is it, because this is the difference in.
it was under administrative, I remember that.
Yeah, so this is right here, this is it. So your concern was more than a duplex.
Right.
And so this is it. So right here, I gotta remember not to touch. So I touch it, it does stuff. Right here this is plot plan single family duplex.
I
So-
can't see that far.
No, you're
Sorry, I forgot my,
No, you're fine.
sunglasses and not my glasses.
So there's 2 processes. There's a single family or
Oh, there we go, okay.
single family or duplex, and then there's the multifamily. Okay?
Mhm.
The only administrative review is for single family or duplex.
Oh,
If
so
you're
you did add duplex in,
yep, it's always been there. It's always been there.
where is it, okay.
This is actually, I didn't change anything from this section of the code. So you've always had a single family or a duplex as a plot plan review that was administrative.
I don't think that's where it was.
Well, your concern was that because we're adding townhomes and you can do 5, 10.
Right.
So my point to you is, and let's scroll down just a little bit, multifamily is limited impact.
So there's no review.
No, it is, it's,
It was administrative,
It comes before us and then city council is there.
hold on, where did,
Or is it city first and then us?
I'm sorry, Michael, I don't mean to be a.
no, you're good. And this should have had a limited impact citation, where is it?
I think it's in the papers I didn't bring.
That's the way it always works.
Sorry. So this is the problem with what I'm doing for you guys, is you have so much stuff in your code.
Townhouse, cause it's C. Let's see.
So,
It was under administrative review and it was something about the townhouse redevelopment or development.
yeah, and I fixed that,
Okay.
but,
I just
sorry.
don't remember where it is exactly. But if you fixed it, you fixed it.
I did, and I'll show you where I fixed it here in
Okay.
just a second. But I am catching something here.
That's the lot lines.
No, it wasn't it. It basically didn't delineate to make a townhouse development, it just like went straight to administrative, only administrative review.
Right.
And he was gonna add the word duplex. but I
I
don't
need to
know where
fix
it is.
this, but, so multifamily, but let me stop share. 7%.
It's not working.
No, it's, that battery not working to me?
You just turn it on somewhere, I'm sure.
Scroll.
No,
That's all right.
it's not gonna be.
Let's move it through.
Right.
Let me,
Did that help?
oh, there you go. I might have did it. I will show you it here in just a sec, because I
Okay.
want to get, if I stop sharing, and then
I
I'm gonna,
understand.
no, that didn't work either. It's okay, it's my own fault. Again, I just want to just go through this real quick, because then we can go to your last question. But you can see here, what I did is basically cite the code sections for limited impact, major impact, under all of that, based on your recommendations. All right, so to answer your question, before I jump there though, any other questions on the subdivision? Okay. Let me,
Do you wanna send me that Word document that you can read on my computer?
let's see if I need to. You won't be able to,
I just wonder if we could use,
it's all right. I think we're there, because I have 23 minutes. If I get done in 10 minutes, I'll do it.
alright,
All right. To answer your last question, I'll show you, because I did address that. So your question was around multiple. So here under administrative review, I said for a 2-unit townhouse, and under limited impact,
Yeah, that was it. That was that, right?
3,
That was
and I made 3 or more.
it. That was it.
So I changed that.
Where was that, just so I can,
No problem. It's under Article 3.
3?
So classification of developments.
Okay,
So
yep, okay.
1433.
all right. So that is
Yeah, it'll be right.
that is the code sections that I have to date. The only other section that was changed and I didn't include it in your packet is the sign permits. There's a variance to the sign permit. That is limited impact. It's the same change, just sites limit. I just didn't want to put the whole sign code in your packet for this meeting for that one sentence, because it's a lot. So at your next meeting, let's talk about your next meeting. So I'm going to leave this because there's no more questions on this. You guys, I'm seeing thumbs up. There's no major concerns, and all the concerns you did bring up were great. So let's talk about March and adoption of the code. So next steps. So at your next meeting, I want to bring the full code. And so your next packet is going to be huge. It's going to have the full recommendation. What I'm going to really focus in on is going article by article, showing you what moved and where. So in Article 1, for instance, I moved all the definitions into Article 1. So I will say that definitions are now in that article, and so I will send you a PDF of each article, like, instead of trying to combine it all, right? I'll send you that, and I'll go through each article and each of the changes in a staff report, so that you can track. And then we'll go through it at the next meeting. So the next meeting is gonna be long, because we're gonna have to go through, and I'll bring a cable. We'll have to go through each of those in here. The only other section that is kind of in limbo right now, that's going to be a major change, is historic preservation. I've talked to these two, they're their own board. Historic preservation will formally have to bring forward a recommendation to planning and zoning. But that article is going to be the only other article in the immediate future that I see having some changes. We will do that outside of this process, because I think it's just going to bog this down.
That's gonna be a long meeting.
Yes. And I think there's some stuff that we want to talk with staff about doing a work session with council too, because it's just outside of what I'm supposed to be doing. But we
You're
do.
changing the whole historic preservation.
No.
We're just adopting the final architectural review component that needs to be incorporated in historic preservation. But Michael is saying there might be some more incorporation that needs to go along with that.
Yeah, so I'm only here to June, and one of the things I want to do is give a very nice, clean new code, right, to the development community. The historic preservation guidelines, so the HBC has created guidelines for review standards of what they review now. There's currently, there's no guidelines and there's no review standards under what they do. Right now, the only thing that's in the code is landmarking.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've created certificate of appropriateness and those. That article is now Article 14 and will be its own article, but we will need to adopt all of Article 14 at one point. What I want to do is I've cleverly created its own article and made it its own article so that when it comes time to repeal and replace Article 14, it's clean and it's just like a in and out. So now we don't have to. And I've also moved the powers of the HBC to boards and commissions so that stays, so like the number of members and everything will be on its own, but their actual review standards is Article 14. But beyond that, we have gotten through basically the process. After we're done with that, and we're supposed to have that adopted in April, the last really thing is anything else that you guys want to talk about the code. And we can talk through any other major issues you have, but those would be entitlements. We have talked a little bit about there's a lot of review standards for it, like the one you brought up with the RV standards. That whole section has a lot of meat on the bone to chew on. My suggestion as a consultant is that you guys systematically through the year go through that section and kind of take one use at a time and spend a work session when you have time to go through it. What I would probably suggest that I could assist with is we could go through in like May, go through all of them and highlight the ones that you have the most concerns about, because I think a lot of them will remain unchanged. But any ones that you particularly are really concerned about, I can probably lend a hand before I leave on getting this straightened out. But that's really, in my opinion, you guys have a pretty decent code after that. I don't have any other major qualms, and the process was the big issue I had. So, the other thing that will be happening is we'll have an area-wide planning effort that's going to really focus on downtown. And that consultant, which is different than me, will be making potential recommendations to zoning. So you will see that independently of me. I will be part of that process going through, so I'll be listening in and understanding what any of the major issues are. So I think in May, hopefully we've gotten far enough along in that process that if something has boiled to the top, we can also have that conversation. Is there anything else big that you guys want to talk about that because in March that you want me to try to address? Okay.
If we think of anything, can we email Chris or?
Yeah, please email Chris because I reserve March for any like controversial things or anything that you guys might want to talk about. So we have it on there. We will be what kind of is the big date that we need to be wrapped up by is April 10th, because that's the day I'm taking this, all your recommendations at a work session in the city council. So we want, I really would love, and again, there's nothing magical. If we need to push that date, I'm happy to push that date. I'm not going to rush something, haste makes waste. But I would really like to present this so that this is adopted in May, and this summer you guys are playing under a new code or new process. Make sense? Okay. Very good. Sorry about the cord.
No worries.
Nice meeting y'all.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Close meeting?
Yeah. Good
Did it
meeting,
work?
guys.
Did it work?
I think you got a lot of good stuff done.
Darn it.
I don't know why.
Yeah.